My name is Rebecca Howard, 33 years old and the middle child no one remembered in the Howard family empire. For most of my life, I was the invisible one, quiet, hard-working, and always standing just out of the spotlight cast by my father and my siblings. That used to hurt. These days, it's an advantage. The late afternoon sun cast long golden streaks over the marshlands as my driver turned onto the winding, oak-lined road leading to the Howard family estate. After years away, the sight of that sprawling Georgian mansion in Charleston, South Carolina, stirred a tangle of emotions. Nostalgia, resentment, and a cool, calculating determination. The stately brick exterior, the towering white columns, the perfect symmetry. Everything about it screamed power and old money. As we pulled up to the circular drive, I spotted my father, Charles Howard, standing near the front steps. His broad shoulders were rigid, his silver-streaked hair perfectly groomed, as always. He leaned close to my mother, Evelyn, speaking in a hushed, urgent tone. Even from the car, I caught the gleam of excitement in his eyes. Evelyn, impeccably dressed in cream cashmere and pearls, gave a fluttery laugh and adjusted his lapel like the doting southern matriarch she'd perfected being. That kind of excitement from my father could only mean one thing. He had news. And knowing Charles Howard, it was something big, something that would shift the balance of power in our family forever. The front door opened, and there was Lucas, my older brother at 39, still radiating the smug self-assurance of someone who'd never truly worked a day in his life. Tall, handsome, and charismatic, Lucas had always been my father's chosen successor at Howard Innovations, the tech company our family built. While he liked to call himself a visionary, his real passions were his boat, his golf game, and the endless stream of women who rotated through his life like a carefully curated gallery. Behind him came my younger sister, Claire. At 29, Claire had turned her entire existence into a brand. With her million-plus social media followers, she flaunted our family name like it was a designer label. She never attended board meetings, never cared about the company, but she knew exactly how to pose in front of the family jet for maximum engagement. My mother gave me a warm but distracted hug as I stepped out of the car. Lucas smirked. Claire snapped a photo of my arrival for her followers. My father barely looked at me, too focused on whatever secret deal he couldn't wait to announce. Little did they know, I wasn't the same girl they'd ignored. Beneath my polite smile was a plan years in the making, one that would change everything by the time this Thanksgiving was over. Growing up in the Howard family meant one thing above all else. Everything revolved around the business. Howard Innovations wasn't just a company, it was practically a living, breathing member of our family. Founded by my grandfather, Richard Howard, it started as a modest local software solutions firm. My father, Charles, took the reins and transformed it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that Charleston's elite treated with near reverence. Every holiday dinner, every family gathering, every milestone celebration inevitably circled back to the company. Quarterly earnings were toasted like new babies. Successful product launches were celebrated with champagne. And in every story told, every accomplishment shared, there was always a clear hero, my father. Then there were us children. Lucas, the eldest at 39, had been cast as the golden heir since the day he was born. Everything about his life was carefully curated to fit that role. Prep school, Ivy League education, internships handed to him like gifts. Even when he slacked off, even when he made obvious mistakes, Dad praised him as learning experiences. Lucas could sink the company's yacht and still be patted on the back for taking initiative. Claire, the youngest, had her own special role. She wasn't expected to run the business or understand it. She was the sparkling socialite, the family's outward face. At every gala and fundraiser, she shone like a polished diamond, charming the press and her massive following on social media. My father didn't always respect her career as an influencer, but he appreciated the image she projected. Glamour and wealth, carefully staged. And then there was me, the middle child, the quiet one, the one people always forgot to introduce at parties. My successes, no matter how significant, were treated like cute hobbies. Even when I won state math competitions or science fairs, my father barely looked up from his spreadsheets. At dinner, Lucas would be congratulated for closing a deal he hadn't actually worked on, while Claire was praised for being featured in a magazine spread. When my turn came, there was only polite silence. It didn't stop me from chasing my passions, though. I loved technology from the moment I could hold a computer mouse. At 14, I built my first functioning program, a scheduling system for my school library. By 16, I was winning regional coding competitions and designing apps just for fun. My grandfather, before he passed, used to watch me work with a knowing smile, saying, "You've got the Howard mind, but in a way this family won't understand yet." After graduating summa cum laude in computer science and business, I came home brimming with ideas to modernize Howard innovations. I spent months developing a proposal for a cloud-based integration system that could bring the company into the future. The day of the board meeting, I walked into that gleaming conference room full of hope. I pitched my vision passionately, outlining potential growth and competitive advantages. When I finished, there was silence. Then my father laughed, not kindly, but dismissively. "Rebecca," he said, shaking his head, "our clients need stability, not experimental tech fantasies. This isn't some college project. This is a serious company." The board members chuckled along with him. I wanted to disappear. 3 months later, Lucas presented a new strategy at another meeting. It was a stripped-down version of my idea, rebranded as his own. Dad applauded him for his innovation and immediately greenlit the plan. That was my breaking point. I packed my bags and left Charleston with only $6,000 in savings and a one-way ticket to Austin, Texas. My father didn't try to stop me. He simply told my mother, loud enough for me to hear, "She'll be back when the real world humbles her." What he didn't know was that I wasn't leaving to escape. I was leaving to build something so powerful that one day he wouldn't be able to ignore me ever again. Austin wasn't glamorous when I first arrived. My apartment was a cramped one-room unit above a noisy taco shop, the kind of place where the plumbing rattled in the walls and the window AC unit worked only half the time. The smell of fried tortillas lingered in the hallways, and the rent ate up nearly everything I had. I lived on instant ramen, cheap coffee, and sheer determination. My days blurred together in a haze of work, freelance coding jobs during the day, and at night, my own projects sprawled across a battered second-hand desk. Sleep was optional. Failure was not. In those first 2 years, I learned what it meant to build something from nothing. I hustled for every dollar, often taking on dull, low-paying gigs just to cover rent and buy myself a little more time to work on my real dream. The Howard name would have opened doors for me, but I didn't want anyone to know who I was. If I succeeded, it would be entirely on my own terms. When I finally launched my own company, I didn't dare use my real name. Instead, I became R. Stone, a clean, sharp alias with no ties to Charleston or the Howard legacy. The R stood for Rebecca, but no one knew that. Summit Tech was born quietly, with just me, a laptop, and a vision. The breakthrough came when I developed a proprietary integration platform designed to help large companies connect their outdated legacy systems with modern cloud technologies. It was the same core concept I'd once pitched to my father, dismissed as a college fantasy, now refined and revolutionary. The platform worked better than I'd dreamed. Word spread fast. Small contracts turned into major deals, and soon venture capitalists came calling. They wanted a piece of Summit Tech, but I refused to give up control. I took enough funding to grow, but I kept majority ownership. My company, my rules. Over the next 5 years, Summit Tech expanded into 3 offices nationwide, with a growing team of engineers and strategists who shared my vision. Behind the scenes, I began acquiring stakes in companies connected to Howard Innovations, their suppliers, their partners, even a few of their clients. Each move was calculated, quiet, and perfectly legal. It wasn't just about building my empire anymore, it was about leverage. As I stared out from my office overlooking the Austin skyline, I made myself a promise. The company my father dismissed me from, the one he refused to let me shape, will one day belong to me. And he'll never see it coming. 10 years after leaving Charleston with nothing but a suitcase and a stubborn dream, I returned home in a way that would make my father take notice, even if he didn't yet understand why. I'd flown private for the first time in my life, a small luxury I rarely indulged in, but this visit wasn't about comfort. It was strategy, a subtle signal that I wasn't the same daughter who'd once begged him to take her ideas seriously. My wardrobe was just as deliberate. I chose a sleek black Prada dress paired with understated Louboutin heels, a classic Hermes handbag, and a delicate gold watch. Nothing flashy, just quiet, unmistakable wealth, the kind my family would instantly recognize. When I stepped out of the car, Claire's perfectly glossed lips parted in surprise. She immediately raised her phone, snapping a photo as if my arrival were a red carpet moment. "Wow, Rebecca," she gushed, angling for the perfect selfie. "Did you finally land yourself a billionaire boyfriend or something? Because this," she gestured at my outfit, the car, everything, "is a serious glow-up." I smiled politely. "No boyfriend. Just work." Lucas sauntered over, already holding a glass of scotch though it was barely afternoon. He gave me a lazy once-over and smirked. "Still playing with your little startup out in Texas?" he drawled. "I've been telling Dad it's adorable how you try to be part of the real business world." "Adorable," I echoed, keeping my tone cool. "Right." Before I could respond further, I caught a familiar voice drifting from my father's study. Charles was speaking with excitement, the kind of tone he reserved for major deals. "Yes, we'll sign after Thanksgiving," he said, his voice muffled, but clear enough to send a thrill through me. 60 million is a strong offer, and Summit Tech has been persistent. Summit Tech. My company. I stood frozen for a heartbeat, savoring the irony. My father was about to sell the empire he'd built, his life's work, to the mysterious firm he thought he'd outsmarted. He had no idea that the person on the other side of that deal was his own daughter. The Howard family Thanksgiving dinner was always a grand production, and this year was no different. The dining room gleamed with polished mahogany and silver, the crystal chandelier throwing warm light over an elaborate spread of roasted turkey, cornbread stuffing, candied sweet potatoes, and every southern delicacy imaginable. At the head of the table sat my father, Charles Howard, his posture rigid and commanding. Lucas, of course, occupied the seat at his right hand like a crown prince beside a king. Claire was stationed on my father's left, her phone strategically propped against a crystal vase to live-stream subtle snippets for her followers without being obvious about it. And me, I was seated at the far end of the table, as distant as possible from the power center of the family, a familiar placement that would have stung years ago. Now it only fueled the quiet satisfaction simmering beneath my calm exterior. Once our plates were filled, it was time for the Howard family tradition, the gratitude ritual. Each person, in turn, shared what they were most thankful for that year. Lucas went first, naturally. He raised his glass and offered a smug grin. "I'm thankful for another record-breaking year at Howard Innovations," he declared, despite the fact that the company had been losing market share for months. "And for the opportunity to carry our family's legacy forward into the future. Also," he squeezed the hand of his latest girlfriend, a blonde yoga instructor, "for this amazing woman." Claire rolled her eyes dramatically, then turned her camera toward herself. "I'm thankful for hitting 2 million followers this year," she said, voice syrupy sweet. And for all my amazing sponsors who've made this journey possible. Love you guys. She blew a kiss to her phone before setting it down again. When my turn came, I set my fork down and spoke evenly. I'm thankful, I said slowly, for the lessons this year has taught me. That sometimes rejection is just redirection, that persistence matters more than privilege, and that carving your own path can be incredibly rewarding. Claire blinked, confused. Lucas smirked. My father merely frowned, as though trying to decode my words before deciding they weren't worth the effort. Finally, it was Charles's turn. He stood, his presence immediately commanding the room. This year, he began, his deep voice echoing through the dining room, I am thankful for the incredible journey of Howard Innovations. We've built something remarkable together. But, he paused dramatically, there comes a time when every great leader must consider the future. My stomach fluttered with anticipation. I knew what was coming. That's why, he continued, I've decided to sell the company. After months of negotiations, the deal will be finalized tomorrow. Summit Tech has offered $60 million for Howard Innovations, a generous offer given the current market. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Lucas shot to his feet, knocking over his wineglass in the process. What? He roared. You can't be serious, Dad. You promised me this company. You've been grooming me for years. This isn't about promises, Charles snapped. It's about securing the future while we still can. Claire gasped loudly and immediately grabbed her phone. Oh my God, you guys, she said breathlessly to her live audience. This is insane. My dad is literally selling our family company right now. Stay tuned. Charles raised a hand for silence. There's one more thing, he said, his expression unreadable. The proceeds from the sale will not be distributed to you children as inheritance. Your mother and I will use a portion for retirement, and the rest will establish a charitable foundation for technology education. Both Lucas and Claire erupted at once. Lucas slammed his fist on the table, rattling the fine china. Claire burst into tears, but kept her phone perfectly angled to capture her dramatic, crying face. Enough, Charles barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. I remained still, calmly taking a sip of wine as the storm raged around me. Then, as the room fell silent again, I set down my glass and spoke. Actually, I said quietly, I have just one question. My father turned toward me, clearly irritated. What is it, Rebecca? I met his gaze unflinchingly. Who do you think you've been negotiating with all these months? Confusion flickered across his face. Summit Tech's CEO, a sharp woman named Stone, I believe. A small knowing smile curved my lips. Yes, Rebecca Stone, or rather, R. Stone, my business name. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and shocking. Claire's phone slipped from her hands with a clatter. Lucas's mouth fell open. My father simply stared, blinking as if trying to make sense of a foreign language. You've been negotiating with me all along, I said, my voice steady. The silence was deafening. Even the antique clock in the hallway seemed to pause. That's impossible, Charles finally said, his tone wavering. You run some small startup in Austin. I slid a slim, platinum business card case across the table toward him. Summit Tech isn't small, and it isn't just some startup. It's mine. I built it. I own it. And now, I leaned forward, holding his gaze, I own Howard Innovations too. His face drained of color as the realization hit. Disbelief turned to anger, then to something far more fragile, fear. For the first time in my life, Charles Howard had no words. And for the first time, I didn't need them. After dinner, the house was in chaos. Lucas stormed through the halls, cursing under his breath. Claire alternated between sobbing and posting cryptic updates to her followers. My father locked himself in his study with a bottle of bourbon, no doubt frantically flipping through company bylaws, searching for a loophole that didn't exist. I waited until Lucas retreated to the library before following him. He was pacing like a trapped animal, his tie loosened, his face flushed with fury and fear. "You," he spat when he saw me. "You think you're so damn clever, don't you? Coming back here to humiliate us. This isn't about humiliation," I said evenly. "It's about truth. And speaking of truth, there's something we need to discuss." He froze mid-step, suspicion flashing in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" I set a slim folder on the desk between us. "I've been auditing Howard Innovations for the past year. Imagine my surprise when I found evidence of $400,000 siphoned out of company accounts." His jaw tightened. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can." My voice remained calm, but my words were razor-sharp. "Transaction records, fake vendor accounts, IP logs showing the entries came directly from your office computer on days when only you were present." It wasn't difficult to connect the dots, he swore under his breath, and sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "Gambling debts?" I asked. "Sports betting, I'm guessing?" Lucas didn't answer, but the silence was confirmation enough. I leaned closer, my tone cold. "You have two choices, Lucas. Resign quietly and repay the money with the generous severance package I've arranged, or I'll take this evidence to the authorities. And believe me, they won't be as forgiving." His head snapped up, fury blazing in his eyes. "You'd ruin your own brother?" "No," I corrected him. "You did that yourself. I'm just giving you a way out." He glared at me for a long moment, then looked away, shoulders slumping in defeat. Later, as I left the library, Claire intercepted me in the hallway. She'd touched up her makeup, her tears gone, replaced by sharp calculation. "So," she began, "you're like a secret tech mogul. That's honestly kind of iconic." I raised an eyebrow. "Is there a point to this, Claire?" "Yes." She clasped her perfectly manicured hands. "I want to help. I could be the public face of your company, the lifestyle brand side of things. People already follow me for glamour and success. Imagine the reach we'd have together." I studied her carefully. "Are you offering to work or just pose for pictures?" "Work," she said quickly, though her tone lacked conviction. "My followers trust me." "That's valuable." "I'll think about it," I said. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. That night, as the house quieted, my mother appeared at my door. She looked older, smaller somehow, her usual flawless composure cracked. "I always knew you were different," Evelyn admitted softly, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I saw your brilliance, even when your father didn't. But I was afraid to challenge him, afraid to disrupt the perfect picture we'd built for a moment." My carefully built walls wavered. "You could have stood up for me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know," she said, tears welling, "and I'll regret my silence for the rest of my life." I reached out, taking her hand. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. In her eyes, I saw genuine remorse, and for the first time, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, our family could be rebuilt on something real. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet, like the calm after a hurricane. I was sipping coffee in the kitchen when my father appeared in the doorway. His once impeccable posture was slightly slumped, and there were dark circles beneath his eyes. "My study. Now," he ordered, his voice hoarse but still commanding. I followed him into the familiar room, lined with shelves of leather-bound business books and framed photos of him shaking hands with politicians and CEOs. Conspicuously missing were any reminders of me. He shut the door behind us and turned sharply. "This sale," he said, his voice trembling with barely controlled anger, "isn't final." "We can undo it." "No, Dad," I said evenly. "We can't." The deal was signed weeks ago, the board approved it unanimously, and the press release goes out in less than an hour. Legally, Summit Tech owns Howard Innovations. His hands clenched into fists. There has to be a way. This is my company, Rebecca, my life's work. I took a slow breath. And I respect that. which is why I'm not here to destroy it, I'm here to save it. Howard Innovations has been bleeding clients for years. Outdated systems, inefficient leadership. If you keep doing things the same way, there won't be a company left to fight over. He turned to the window, staring out at the manicured grounds like they might offer him an escape. So what now? You just erase me, erase everything I built. No. I stepped closer, my voice softening. The Howard name will remain. The company will be modernized, streamlined, brought into the future. But it needs new leadership to survive. He glanced over his shoulder, wary. And my role in this brave new future? I allowed a small smile. Chairman Emeritus. A respected figurehead. You'll have an office, a voice in advisory meetings, and a generous compensation package. No operational authority, but your legacy stays intact. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned to face me fully, his expression a mix of pride and defeat. You outmaneuvered me completely, he admitted quietly. Your grandfather would have been impressed. Coming from Charles Howard, that was as close to an apology as I would ever get. I extended my hand, meeting his gaze. Welcome to Summit Tech, Dad. After a pause, he shook it, and for the first time, we stood as equals. 6 months later, the company my father once ruled with an iron grip looked completely different. The name Howard Summit Technologies gleamed in bold silver letters across the newly renovated headquarters. Gone were the dark, closed-off offices and outdated equipment. In their place were open, collaborative spaces filled with energy and innovation. Under my leadership, we'd modernized our products and streamlined operations, winning back old clients and attracting new ones faster than even I had predicted. The transition hadn't been easy, but it was working. For the first time, the company felt alive. Lucas, to my surprise, had chosen growth over self-destruction. After our tense confrontation, he quietly resigned from his executive position and enrolled in an accelerated MBA program. He still called me occasionally, asking real questions about strategy and leadership. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a start. Claire had also found her place in the new order. Her social media savvy, once dismissed as frivolous, became a valuable asset for our marketing branch. She crafted campaigns that connected with younger, tech-savvy clients in ways our old team never could. Watching her channel her energy into something meaningful gave me hope that we might finally understand each other. Even my mother had transformed. Freed from her role as silent mediator, Evelyn began volunteering with organizations that helped young women enter technology fields. I want to make sure other girls like you don't grow up feeling invisible, she told me one evening. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. As Thanksgiving approached again, the air felt different. This year there would be no extravagant rituals or staged performances, just family, sitting down together, still learning how to truly see one another. I stood in the lobby beneath the new company sign, looking up at it with a quiet smile. The true victory wasn't taking the company, I realized. It was finally being seen for who I really was. If you've stayed with me through this journey, thank you. For years, I believed success was about proving my father wrong, about showing the world and myself that I was more than the invisible middle child. But standing here now, I've learned that building an empire isn't enough. True healing takes more than power or wealth. It takes honesty, forgiveness, and the courage to rebuild relationships you once thought were broken forever. Maybe you've faced similar struggles in your own family or business. If so, I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below and let's start a conversation. Because real success isn't what you build alone, it's what you create together.